Welcome to New Human Living Radio Show, bringing you powerful interviews to awaken the power in you. Learn more at newhumanliving.com. And now your host, Les Jensen.
So let me ask you a question that's pretty much impossible to answer. It's not like I'm setting you up or anything. What are you capable of? What are you capable of? Not just this. Well, I can shoot baskets. I'm not looking for that kind of answer. What is your potential over time? What could you accomplish in 5 years, 10 years, in decades? What's your potential? Do you know it's impossible for you to answer that? I suggest. And there's a couple of reasons why. You're a soul. You're this gigantic, multidimensional, non-linear soul somehow shoehorned into a physical body. And unless you've been practicing, it's going to be your ego that answers that question. And egos tend to suck at knowing nonlinear, multidimensional potential. I'm super stoked about tonight's show, but that's not going to get you out of that question. What are you capable of? The thing is, we bump up against ourselves. The ego's totally about feeling in control. The ego wants to know that every decision it makes is going to keep the ego in charge, is going to keep the ego at the helm. And the power play is really the vision of our soul and the passion of our heart. If your heart were to express, if you were to heal your bold and courageous heart and then engage the vision of your life that your soul had in mind before you were born, the untrained ego would burst into flames, metaphorically, because the life path becomes nonlinear and the ego has to let go. Well, it doesn't have to let go. Most of humanity is proving that the ego doesn't have to let go. So, damn, I'm so excited about tonight's show. I am. The topic tonight is the title of a book, Conscious Bravery. Caring for someone with addiction. And our guest tonight is Pamela Brinker, and we're going to bring her on in just a minute. But there's something that happens when we go to be bold or we go to be vulnerable. Intimacy can bring this. For a couple to do deep, intimate work like perhaps Tantra or things of that nature, you're going to bump up against your shadow. You're going to bump up against things that make your ego feel nervous. You're going to bump up against aspects of your past that are collecting cobwebs because you just don't want to go there. But there's a beautiful, beautiful thing that happens, and our guest tonight embodies that so well. When you can heal your relationship with pain, heal your relationship with perhaps circumstances out of your control, if you can heal your ego's tendency to pull back or, quote, play it safe, unquote, whole new realms of potential open up for your life. When I first went to write a book, it took me 6 years because my ego was arguing the whole flipping time. What the hell, me write a book? Come on. And now writing books brings me such joy. So I had a potential in myself, i.e. writing books, and my ego was scared of it. And so I had a 6-year arguing match. And now I can write a book and it doesn't bother me too much at all. So my future changed. I want to say my life purpose changed, but not, it changed from my ego's perspective, but not my soul's perspective. My soul showed me this big ass stuff coming down the pike, and it's like, all right, I'm just going to trust. I don't have to figure it out. This was all laid down on paper, multi-dimensional paper. Yeah, that makes sense. Long before I was born. So when you listen to this episode tonight, I want you to daydream, get some serious daydreaming going on about who you might become if you were to learn how to trust yourself, if you were to learn how to feel the discomfort, to learn how to feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable, to go into that shadow side, to go into that painful side of your past and heal it and clean it out and not be intimidated by it. That's going to change the dynamic of your whole flippin' life. How cool is that? That's the kind of stuff that gets me up in the morning. I think we should get to it because Pamela brings a lot to the table. Again, the topic tonight is conscious bravery, caring for someone with addiction, and our guest tonight is Pamela Brinker. As a licensed clinical psychotherapist, Pamela has been working with clients to help move them through pain and into bravery for over 20 years. She's a passionate speaker, educator, and advocate. But above all, she is a mother who has struggled with the emotions and challenges of raising 2 sons wrestling with addiction. Her living wisdom resonates throughout the book with intimate stories that give context and meaning to the practical advice. As she writes, I felt that way dozens of times and am here to offer you ways to pull yourself up, stand tall, and walk forward, one shocked or exhausted step at a time. Join me in welcoming Pamela to the show. Pamela, you're finally on the show.
Thank you, Les. It's a delight to be here with you and your listeners.
What a story you have. I always like to start off with a little context. Can you share with us kind of the aspects of your life path that got you to write a book about conscious bravery?
Certainly. About 12 years ago, my 2 teenage sons, stepdad passed away from brain cancer. And so we had been given about a year to know that he had that much time left to live. And we were a pretty tight family. My sons and I were close. But then when my husband passed away and they lost the stepfather that they loved so dearly, they were grieving more than I imagined that they would. And in my own devastation, I kind of fell apart. You know, so much had been uncertain that year, so much had changed. I faced what all of us face, huge changes, huge physical changes in my husband. my two teenage sons were growing up a little, during that year. But at any rate, they really fell apart, Les, and they turned to substances, to alcohol and drugs as the answer to their pain. And that's really what happens for many of us as addiction seeds are planted. Not everyone becomes addicted to a substance, but they had so many things that were going on. They both had severe ADHD and so forth. So anyway, I fell apart, and at times I really didn't even know how I was going to do it. And I remember saying to myself a few times, I can't do this. And then one day grace really hit me, and I consider it a download, really, a gift from God and the universe. And it was a quote I had read that Cheryl Strayed had written in her book, Tiny Beautiful Things. And she had written that we parents don't have the luxury of despair. So I realized I've got to be able to be with my grief and pain and model that to my sons, walk alongside them as they're mourning and trying to figure out their lives and their next steps. But I've got to use tools and practices that really help me out of this abysmal place. So I really wrote this book, Conscious Bravery. I began writing it in varying ways back then because it wasn't available to me. There was no bravery protocol out there. I was trained to so many different resources and different kinds of therapy to try to pull myself together and to be the mom that could be the anchor for my sons that I needed to be. So I started just putting everything together and walking alongside them, and yet they were really, really devastated, and they turned to not just stimulants, but over the course of a few years, they became addicted to methamphetamines, to crystal meth, and to other various types of meth. And so that journey was so hugely devastating, and there were many times that were just harrowing, that I began to compile this research really and practice it myself. I had to really rewrite a lot of the things I had partnered with my clients in tools and practices I had taught them and worked with them to use in their lives. I had to really revamp those and modify them and use them myself. So that's the beginning of the book. And as I rewrote the book in this last year, I really realized how much my own personal story needed to be included. So I have told a little bit of some of the things I've been through in the book, some of the times in which I just fell flat on my face and made huge mistakes and didn't know what to do, but did the best I could with the awareness that I had. But so hence the word conscious, because I really believe we all need conscious bravery. That's what I needed. I needed not just the kind of bravery that could leap in and save the day. I needed the awareness to be tender if that was what was needed. So I like the word conscious bravery because it's a bravery that's vibrantly alive and awake. And it's activated not just when we're having a spiritually joyful moment. It's activated even when we're feeling despair or shame. And that's what I had to learn how to do, is how to really feel the complete loss and grief and feel that uncertainty so that I could learn, as you were saying earlier, how to become more comfortable with discomfort, how to be able to handle overwhelm and to prepare for it.
Now, you've worked as a licensed clinical psychotherapist, and you've gone through this experience with your kids. When you're observing a loved one and you want change, you want the dynamic, the narrative to change so bad, or perhaps you're the psychotherapist and you're helping others try to change or help people in their life change. Where are the reins to change in a persona's life, in a human being? How do you? Is there a process or a mechanism that works every time?
That's a great question, and I love how you called it a process or a mechanism, because I think it can be both and many other things too, because everyone's unique. Each one of us are individuals, so we want to first know ourselves, and that's what I had to learn. I had to know what triggered me. I had to try not to fix my triggers and avoid them, try not to deny my own pain, but to be really present with it. So that's one of the first things that I teach and that I see working with anyone, is when we're able to have the awareness to notice what's happening in our experience. And we notice on a lot of different levels. I call them the 6 zones of experience. We can notice what's happening in our hearts with our emotions. Like I might be feeling absolutely overwhelmed. So I notice that feeling in my heart, that heaviness. And I might notice that sensation in my throat too, Les. You know, I might feel a tightness in my throat or a heaviness in my shoulders. So I might just pay attention to that. Or what might be leaping out at me might come from my thoughts. My thoughts might just be racing, saying, you've got to fix this, you need answers, you know, that kind of thing, right? Or it might be that my intuition is speaking to me saying, hey, you can't trust this, you need to take control. But of course, so much is out of our control. So again, we want to really notice what's happening without judgment in our whole experience. So I talked about the heart. I mentioned our minds, and we pay attention to our bodies. We listen to what our intuition is saying to us. We might not take the advice of our intuition, and then we go into the energy around us, because new research shows that our bodies don't end with our skin. So we pay attention to that energetic vibe in that circle of space, that bubble, the container immediately around us. What's happening there? What's happening in our environment? And just notice it without judging it. That's the real key to all of this. We don't judge it. We don't say, oh, I shouldn't be feeling that, or that shouldn't be happening. We just go, oh, wow, that's happening. This is what is. And then the very hub of these 6 zones of our experience is our essence. And I call it essence because I love that word. It's a beautiful, elegant word, and it doesn't conjure as many interpretations as soul or self. And so we tap into our essence. And that's really the hub of our whole being. And so really when we're feeling that so much is out of our control, the very first thing we can do is, instead of trying to tend to our situation and make sense of it, we go into our whole being and we do this scan, and we become conscious in these 6 zones of experience. And I find it very helpful, and my clients find it helpful to label them using 1 to 3 words to describe each zone. And they can be seemingly opposing things, like I might feel hopeful in my essence, or I might experience in my essence that peace, like it's going to be all right. This is the human experience. This is not everything. But I might at the same time be feeling completely panicked. There have been so many times when I've been completely panicked or just not knowing what to do and feeling hopeless, or even helpless, which is a feeling I can't stand. I can't stand feeling helpless. And so my tendency as a former endurance athlete was to do stuff, and to be in my body and to help people solve things or get moving, do something like that. But I found, Les, that conscious bravery can look 100 different ways on 100 different days. It's not always tough as nails. It can look like softness, and it can sound like stillness. It can look like listening, and it can sound like quiet. And so it's a different experience for each person, and I believe we need to start with who we are and get to know our own experience and get to know who we are, who we truly are.
Right. Well, I really like how you've put some context to the many ways that we can sense angst and worry and fret and fear. And as I listen to this, I mean, addiction is certainly a very powerful dynamic. But all of this would apply to watching somebody go through cancer that you love, or watching yourself go through cancer, or maybe being in a war zone and watching the slow motion death of your culture or something. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because what you're talking about is really powerful, and just to kind of broaden the tool set that you're sharing with us to help people that are going through situations that they have no control over, and they're watching it happen. And you know, the ego is such a talented drowner of hopes, in the sense that you can. We talked, I think it was last week's show or the week before, we talked about suicide, and where a narrative gets going in your brain and you feel a sense of hopelessness. I mean, what you're talking about is really a very powerful skill set that would work across, I think, many aspects of how humanity is suffering, navigating this slow motion karmic tsunami called life.
Absolutely. Yes, these concepts and practices apply to any challenging situation, because the things that I love to teach and that helped me are, for example, to utilize conscious breathing, not just taking 3 deep breaths, as many of us have heard others tell us, but to really breathe consciously into our experience and not run from it. You know, as you're saying, so we might have a parent with Alzheimer's who has forgotten on a particular day who we are, or we, as you said, we might be struggling with cancer or residual trauma after something horrific like war, like sexual abuse. And so we need some grounding capacity to be able to see things differently and gain greater perspective, as you're saying. And so when I was talking about getting to know who we are, I didn't know who I was. When my husband died and my sons were really, really struggling, and one of them got arrested, you know, he was only 17, he got arrested for possession of drugs and paraphernalia. I thought I was a mom. I thought I was a therapist, and I designated myself that way, as an athlete, as a musician, those kinds of things that I was decent at. And that's what most of us do. We think that who we are is either a role or a skill set or accomplishments or our talents, right? But really, truly, Les, and all of our beautiful listeners, who we are is we are this essence, this beautiful being that we've been before birth and through this life, and it's unchanging. It's connected to God and the universe. It's connected in authentic connection to each other, this beautiful essence that we have. And then we carry it with us into death and beyond. And so once I realized I'm my essence, I'm not my role as a mother, whether I'm a decent mother today or not, whether I'm able to help my sons or not, I'm still my essence, you know, and that, when so much is out of our control, that's something I can stand on. That's something that can help me feel grounded and calm my panic and rise, you know, because we need to be able to rise and be poised in our situation so that we can be an oasis for our loved ones who are struggling. We want to be that so that they can say, oh, wow, look at Les, look at him. He knows how to handle this. And maybe I can actually do that.
Well, I like that. Well, it seems like people are kind of they're drowning in the mundane. They're drowning in they're paying attention to information that has no value as far as what their heart and their soul would consider food. It's like an ego or a mind busyness, ego or a mind, you know, staring at the phone, looking for yet another distraction. What about? I mean, there's such a like depression or a sense of hopelessness, but what about the softer ways that we check out? The softer ways where we fall into a melancholy, we fall into a mundane sense of ourself. And I see so many people that there's just nothing on their radar. They're not working on anything. They're not doing anything to grow themselves. They're like treading water, hoping things will come about. Especially the last couple of years, there's been so much change. To tread water, to disengage the creation process, so to speak, within ourselves. How do you find out where you're disconnected if you're disconnected from that part of you?
Ooh, that's great. We initially commit, as you clearly have, to becoming more conscious, or we commit to becoming more aware and to paying attention. And it's really wonderful that when we send that out to the universe, we get an answer. When we want to become more aware, the universe will definitely give us what we need to become more conscious. But once we've committed to it, we have to practice. And that's where I'm laughing, because I laugh at myself. I wanted to practice on easy things. I wanted to practice in just a calm moment, which of course we have to do, right? Just like learning to play the piano, we practice when we just want to sit down and play some scales or play a piece, and it's during the calm moments. But we also have to practice when the universe gives us the harrowing situations and says to us, okay, now there's this. Practice with this. And so there's this magic that can happen in the mud, right? Just like with that beautiful image of the lotus flower. There's magic and mystery that happens in suffering. And I'm not saying we need to stay in suffering, because as you know about me, I'm a vibrantly awake, alive, joyous person. But I am that because I commit to also letting myself feel my suffering. I'm really pretty good at suffering. I really know how to not just fix my triggers, but say, wow, I'm really triggered right now. I feel like yelling at my son, or I feel like just crying my heart out. And so I will. I'm with my own pain, and I might hold myself, and I teach this to my clients too, even my guy clients, to cross one arm, put your hand on the left shoulder or kind of your bicep, put your left hand on your right tricep and give yourself a hug, or put both hands on your heart space. So really, we need to bring these concepts and practices into our bodies. As you and I were talking the other day, people like Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk and some of the people like Dan Siegel have taught us through recent neuroscience that we've got to get into our bodies, not away from them. And so you were asking, how do we come out of those softer places like the depression? Well, first off, we notice what's happening. Like, I'm really feeling unmotivated, immobilized. I don't even want to get out of bed. And so we bring in tools and practices that everybody knows works, and we commit to them. Things like gratitude practices. Like, I don't even get out of bed and put my feet on the floor until I can say, I am grateful that I have a roof over my head and a floor to put my feet on. And that I have water to go get from the kitchen and have a big glass of water. And so gratitude practices help us. But, how do we do that? How do we remember to be grateful? You were saying, well, we have to commit to working with our whole being, because the signals will come to us from any one of those 6 zones. Sometimes our bodies will alert us and say, wow, hey, I've got this low back pain. Man, this is that old sciatica coming back at me. This is this intergenerational thing I've been carrying around in my body or whatever. And we listen to it, and then we practice paying attention. There's all this talk these days about affirmations and, rising above, but actually the only way to rise above and come into our lives and really live them to the fullest and have greater happiness and get through these devastations is by practicing. We commit to it and we do stuff over and over and over. And so even with affirmations, I've found that when we embody them, when we walk around the house saying whatever we're trying to affirm, like, remember who I am, or feel my pain and then let it move through me, and then I'll feel a lightness. Or we practice conscious breathing, which conscious breathing can actually lift us up and elevate us if we breathe more quickly. Like that, we can actually elevate our mood, and we can stand up and get our shoulders back and be in our bodies, feel our bare feet, or if we're not barefooted, get barefooted, feel our feet on the floor and connect them into the earth, and then we feel a lift. Or conscious breathing can also bring us down if we're anxious and panicked, and we can breathe more slowly, practice Ujjayi breathing or something like that, like that's the Darth Vader breathing where we're breathing like that to activate heat and calm in the body. So those are a couple of practices that actually help us during challenges.
Well, I like that. Well, and I think there's something that happens when we put ourselves in an environment that we don't know the answer to, where it's like, it can be as simple as taking a contra dancing class. And people might go, contra dancing? What the hell is that? But it's really kind of it's such a kick because it's very community oriented. In a single dance, you'll dance with 6, 7, 8 people, and it can get so fast that you have to get out of your brain and stay present in your body. And what kind of things can be, because the flip side of struggle, the flip side of anguish, remorse, pain, is joy, happiness, sensual, laughter, fun. How do we stoke the fire to those positive attributes?
And I love what you said, that we have to get out of our brains and into our bodies. And so I'll come at your question at the back way, okay?
Sure.
Right, Les? So initially, we want to get out of this place where for years and years our culture has talked about mindfulness, because mindfulness just conjures the mind. And the mind is already the source of so many of our troubles, because we ruminate in our minds and we fixate and we focus on stuff from the past, or we focus on what we fear might happen in the future. But instead, we want to befriend all of ourselves and get into our bodies. We have these beautiful containers that were given to us in this life. And so I'm going to answer your question now. We have to shift. I love that you were talking about dancing. We can maybe try movement meditation, try dancing meditation, try ecstatic dancing. Try doing things that are hard for us, like asking for help. For most of us, asking for help is hard. And so I'll tell you a little story. Is that okay if I launch into a little story? It's a very personal one. Yeah, so a few years ago, when both of my sons had chosen homelessness, neither one of them wanted to be in treatment, but both of them were not thinking well. They had altered states happening, which some people call psychosis. I prefer calling it altered states. They had internal stimuli, but simultaneously. And my mother's heart was just torn up because one of them had gotten beat up, and I knew about this, had gotten beaten up and injured, homeless, and the other one was becoming rail thin on methamphetamines. And, he's 6'3" tall, and he probably weighed about 130 pounds.
Wow.
And so I was just I don't know, there are almost no words for how troubled I was. It was really hard to get out of bed and put my feet on the floor in gratitude. And then I think most of our listeners can relate to this, my soul pet, Socrates, my Maine Coon, and most of us have had a pet that we've loved in our lives. It's been absolutely amazing. Socrates was this wise cat. Everybody called him that. They said, oh my gosh, he's the most amazing cat I've ever known. He was playful, he was wise, he was just intuitive. But anyway, he accidentally got out. One of our friends came over and left the door open, not to blame anybody. It just happened. But he got out for the first time, and he was an indoor cat, and he got out. And I didn't know it because I'd already gone to bed and I was asleep. So I woke up the next morning, and he hadn't come onto my bed like he usually did, and I just freaked out, and I looked all over for him, and I said to my husband, he's gone, we've got to go look. And so we looked around the house, and we Googled stuff, like where do cats go when they've never been out before. Anyway, long story short, I was blessed to get to know my neighbors during this time because over 200 people came into my world to help me find Socrates. And here's what I did.
Wow.
I found out that one of my neighbors on my block was actually a pet detective. She was a cat detective. She had trained her little dog with a police trainer, and her dog knew how to find cats. And she also told me, put up these ginormous yellow posters with a color photograph of your cat on every single stop sign in our neighborhood, and put a flyer in every single mailbox. So I put probably 500 flyers in the mailboxes with photos of my cat, with my reward, this amount of money, a reward. Here's my phone number. Text me if you see him. Come to my house. Here's my address. Whatever you want to do. And so people came alive. This happened end of July into August, and people would stop by our house. Oh my gosh, I saw Socrates. He was under my front porch. Here's my address. And so, I'd get the crate and the tuna, which was a rare treat, run over to their house. And sure enough, he'd be gone because he was on the run. He was a scaredy cat because he'd never been out and about. And anyway, long story short, 3.5 weeks later, I was having a party for my husband for his birthday, Les. And 2 women came over, and they said, we've been trying to call you. They came to our house. We've been trying to call you. Your cat is under our porch. And so one of my dear friends and I did this. So many people came to help me over this period of time. And one of my dear friends had the tuna ready, and I had the crate ready just in case. And we dashed over, and these people had a super long porch. And anyway, Socrates was probably about 12 feet to the very end of it. And I think he was making his bed to die. Anyway, we lured him over with tuna, grabbed the scruff of his neck. I held him in my arms and just held him and cried with joy. He was just bones. He had gone down from 13.5 pounds down to, I think it was 7 pounds.
Wow.
And anyway, we took him straight to the vet. The vet said, wow, you got him here just in the nick of time. And I said, I didn't. It was my neighborhood. And I just get tears because that was so uncomfortable for me. I was used to being the person, the therapist that helped everybody else, that led the workshops, that did the couples therapy, that helped individuals find themselves. But I had to find a new self for me. I had to learn how to ask for help and receive it. And it was such a beautiful experience. It's a mystical experience, receiving help in that way. I mean, so many people texted me. I really literally kept track of how many people texted me. My neighborhood wrote a story about Socrates in the neighborhood association. They compiled it. One gentleman wrote a really brilliant story about Socrates, and they gave him the month of August, as the month of August in our neighborhood is dedicated to Socrates, and they called him the cat that lived.
Wow. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I love this story because of who you became by picking up a new dynamic in your life. It was, as you have shared, it was so not in your wheelhouse, so to speak, to go interact with all these people. So look at yourself before you've gone through all of this growth. So maybe a teenager, I don't know the dynamic of your life, but look at before you woke up, so to speak, in a gentle way, and who you are now, and how would you describe the difference between those two personas?
I've learned to shift how I view mental health and addiction. And I really attribute a lot of it to that time when Socrates was lost, and I was so worried about my sons, but I had a lot of free time on my hands to research. And I started reading a lot more information, a variety of different kinds of information about addiction. And no one wants to become addicted. Again, we seek substances or behaviors as answers to our pain or even to our pleasure. You know, if we really feel happy, we might want to really celebrate and use a substance or a behavior to do that more thoroughly. But inevitably, we turn to those things as solutions to our pain, either our depression or our grief or our panic. And all of us have stuff like that, right? All of us have something that we deal with that's either a compulsion, and I've learned to just call it. Like, I'm totally addicted to chocolate, but I choose to be. I love my chocolate, and I will eat an entire bar of chocolate in one day if I feel like it. You know, the great big Choco Love or the Ultra Eco. I'll eat a whole bar because I like it. But I know it may not be good for me, but it's not killing me, and I'm pretty healthy. I eat a lot of greens and other things. But anyway, long story short, I really began to view health in a new way, and I guarded my health with my life, and I started protecting my happiness and putting the oxygen mask on my own face first, so that when it felt like the plane was going down, I could understand and walk alongside my sons if they were having a relapse, or if they were depressed and felt like taking their own lives, or if they were off panicked, full of anxiety and high on methamphetamines and angry. You know, that's happened too. My sons have been not themselves when they've been on meth, because it turns people into somebody else, really. And so I've learned to have a lot more compassion, boundaried compassion. I believe in loving boundaries and having awareness about what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. You know, like a little definition of boundaries to me is boundaries are for our own self-care. We're not trying to control someone else. And so I learned to say to my sons, and I'm very imperfect at this still, but I'm much better. I see health as a gift, and I decide that it's not up to me to decide what's healthy for them and what's not. Some days I'm just grateful that my sons are alive or that they can breathe. You know, their health may still be challenged in certain ways, right? And so I don't judge, and I have this different perception of addiction. I have so much more compassion for it as a disorder and a disease. It's not a character flaw. Every single one of us has some sort of compulsion, or we're addicted to something. So when we can turn that empathy that we have for ourselves outward and offer that compassion to our beloved, they do better, and we feel better as well.
Wow, very well said, well spoken. Well, now we've talked about quite a few things here. Where would you want this conversation to go? What other elements would you like to bring into the episode?
I guess I'd like to talk about love in that way, because I bet most of you listening have had some sort of intergenerational patterning in your lives, you know. And so again, with non-judgment, I've learned to notice the cycles of my own patterns that have repeated from generation to generation, you know, such as my family has addiction and mental health issues. I've had cousins that have taken their own lives and so forth. And so there are more effective tools for coping, though, with our discomfort and with our pain and our overwhelm than simply turning to substances. Now, it's okay to turn to a substance, too. I'm kind of a beverage queen, and I drink my tea ritually, and I drink my espresso, and I drink wine, and I'm not a person that has trouble controlling the amount, but I don't judge other people who do. But I've learned to develop different kinds of coping skills so that I have an array of things to choose from. Because in any given moment, you might not be able to sport a downward dog, you know, right? That's a yoga pose. You might not be able to do that. However, I have been known to do yoga in the parking lot. And so in my next book, I'm going to talk about yoga in the parking lot, because I'll do various Tadasana or a goddess pose or a warrior pose in the parking lot, because I wanted to break free of old ways of operating, do things that make me shift. And so I might say, oh, wow, those people might stare at me. What the heck? If they do, that's their choice. It's not their business what I'm doing. And
right.
So that to me is love. That is self-love that is so big that I am getting past my ego. I am getting past old ways of operating. And then I can extend that love to my beloveds, to my sons and my husband and other people, my clients. And that love is I like to say love is the fiercest force, because loving awareness helps me step back and see with greater perspective. Les, you know this, love outlasts regret, it outlasts pain, it heals trauma. It's a renewing elixir. And with the depth of love, we can rewire. And that's what epigenetics teaches us these days. We have got to rewire and reprogram
right.
so that we don't operate in those same kinds of ways. And we can change, thankfully, in this life. So I would ask our listeners, what motivates you? What is your meaning? What do you live for? And what's your purpose day to day? So there's that overarching question of what's your meaning in the umbrella, and then what's your day-to-day purpose? And for me, it seems to always come down to love. I love myself. I love God. I love you already, Les. And we haven't even met. And I love your listeners, because when we have such great empathy and passion for life, it's so easy to love. It's so much easier to love than it is to dislike someone if we can extend non-judgment and compassion. And so love is this fierce force. So I would ask our listeners to decide, what do you live for? What's your meaning? And that may shift and change. And what's your purpose? And it can be different from mine, for sure.
Well,
love is the best.
Well, love is so powerful. I mean, it'll kick your ass in such wonderful ways over and over and over again. I like to say, if love isn't turning your perception of your life on its head, poke it with a stick a few times and see if you can wake it up. Because
I love that.
Because
poke it into activation.
Well, that's right, because it's not really demonstrated per se in the collective, and it is such a, oh damn, you just can't corral it in any way into a paragraph or a sentence without buggering it up, and it's just eternally ready for more, I guess. I find it fascinating. I intend to OD on it, so in a metaphorical way.
You're right, but I'm in love with love too. But again, how do we love ourselves? We practice self-love. We practice compassion and empathy. We get into somebody else's whole being. We not just walk in their shoes, but we imagine what it's like to be them. And that's love, because empathy is a form of love. And so I like to say empathy and bravery are best friends.
Well, and love doesn't have a measuring stick. It doesn't quantify crap. It takes everything as it is. And the unconditional love is I have to go to the burning bush. I am that I am. It's like there's no adjective that I have posture with. I am that I am. And perhaps the Bhagavad Gita that says, as it is, there you are, there you are, there you are. And I have no need to bring in a symbol table or some kind of a metric or quantify any of that crap. Love is it's so elegant. It's just it's the coolest thing. I mean, poke it, get stirred up, let it burn in your heart, and put it out there, because you can't exhaust it. It always has more to show you. And that's what I really liked about this episode is that, like I was saying in the opening, our egos will want to choose a safety net or a safety zone, some comfortable place of operation, and that's perhaps the blasphemy of love, to not engage it when there's an opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, beautifully said, all of it. Yes, it feels risky to love, but that's actually sort of the trick, because it's riskier not to love, right?
Right. Right. Well, it's a slow motion death.
But you're right. Love is inexhaustible. It's infinite.
Oh yeah. Well, now we're getting towards the end of the hour. I want to make sure the audience knows about you, your platform, if you work with people one-on-one, online, your book, your webpage. Give us a whole rundown, if you will.
Thank you. And I'm so happy and pleased to be here with you, Les, and thank you to your listeners. I'm just very, very grateful for everybody who's here and broadening your awareness. So where to find me? You can find me at PamelaBrinker.com. That's my website. And there are lots of blogs on the website, and there are testimonials. There are graphics, little one-page summarizations that will help you, like the whole being scan that I kind of walked everybody through a little earlier tonight. And there are some other tools that are helpful there. So go to PamelaBrinker.com. I would love everybody to go to my Amazon. I didn't have any control over this, but Amazon reduced the price of my book to $12.39. And I guess they did that because initially there were so many people buying it that first month that I think they may have overstocked. And so right now the book is that price for the paperback, and it's $9.99 for the Kindle. So if you just go to Amazon.com, Conscious Bravery. And then I would also be so grateful if everyone would go to my YouTube channel, because I'm about to put up one YouTube per day, little 15 to 20 second YouTubes, Les and listeners, and also some 2-minute YouTubes that are really fun. And I teach things like Earth and Sky, this practice that's very simple that, it only takes a minute to do. And I teach things like, a lot of people call it bilateral stimulation, but the left-right exercise to really activate both sides of our brains and our bodies. So there's going to be some fun videos going up on my YouTube channel, which is Be Brave with Pamela Brinker.
Well, very nice. Well, you only live just down the road a tad, and maybe someday our paths will cross. I want to thank you, yes, Pamela. I mean, the vibrance of your personality. I mean, you've been through a few shitstorms, so to speak, and you've had to figure things out. And I'm just delighted with who you are as a vibrant, alive, engaged human being after going through some tough stuff. It's like, I like the metaphor. It's like, it seems like the soul's journey. You come out of the tsunami, you're dripping wet, you've come out of the storm, you get your bearings, you shake yourself off, and you turn around, you walk back into the storm. But this time is as a vehicle of compassion, and you really embody that really well. So I want to thank you for being our guest tonight. I've really enjoyed this episode.
Thank you so much. You're just a beautiful being, and I think you do what I do, which is I stand in both the shadow and the light. And when we can do that, everything is magical and more real.
We've been talking with Pamela Brinker, and the topic tonight has been conscious bravery, caring for someone with addiction. Pain is only a stimulus. Your relationship with that. You can redefine your experience with pain. I think where we get stuck so many times is we have this default reaction. And one thing a repetitive reaction does is create the same results. Reactions make the same results. And a lot of times we can get flat out stuck because we stay in that repetitive reactive cycle, which always produces the same results, which don't always serve us. And so to redevelop, to change, to reprogram the stimulus, your relationship with the stimulus, your relationship with pain, your relationship with uncertainty, your relationship with angst, your relationship with loss. You're bigger than all of those. You're a gigantic, multidimensional soul somehow shoehorned into a physical body. So whatever you're going through, it's only a chapter. No, there's no chapter that dominates the book. There's always another chapter. There's always another potential. There's always another possibility. We're always at a never-ending crossroads, so to speak, of what and who we might become in our lives. So I salute you, the listener, because here you are, you're listening to this episode, and you're showing up for yourself. You're interested in growing who you are. So I want to celebrate you for showing up for yourself. Damn. Life is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and we're at such a dynamic, vibrant, exciting time. We're looking at the transformation of a flippin' planet. I know it looks like wet cleanup aisle 5, but find that, as Pamela has shared, there's that inner core of you that's got this, that knows the bigger picture. It's only our little ego selves that can get so flippin' lost off in the weeds. It's my passion, it's my pleasure, it's my purpose to language love, to language the dynamic of this human genome. What does it mean to be a human being on a planet, and what can you do to show up more in a way that honors you, in a way that grows you, in a way that excites you, perhaps a sense of adventure for your life. Always a pleasure, always a pleasure. I'm your host, Les Jensen. I want to thank you for sharing this time with us. Until next time, thanks for listening.
This has been a New Human Living radio broadcast to bring your soul's inspiration into effect and live your life wide open. Check out our host, Les Jensen's book, Citizen King, The New Age of Power, at newhumanliving.com. Thanks for listening.